Hello and welcome back in this very awesome requested video by Mr. Kevin Somasot. Sorry, I apologize if I'm not saying your name correctly, but Mr. Kevin Somasot. So he requested the Toyota 1NR-FE engine, an economical inline 4 engine made by Toyota and used, I think, in Europe and in, I don't know, in Malaysia or something. It's a tiny engine. It's a compact engine and used in an economical applications to make a good amount of power and torque and saving a lot of fuel. So basically, there was a Euro 4 version and Euro 5 version, and there is like the Euro 3 version also. And this engine sold in Europe and Indonesia, and I don't know, in a lot of other places. So basically, and this engine uses in the Toyota Corolla, the Corolla Exio, and the Toyota IQ, the Toyota Passo, the Rectus, the Urban Cruiser, the Verso S, the Vios, and the Yaris, of course. And there are a lot of versions, because the N family, or as they call it, the Toyota NR family, is a big family. There is the 1NR-FE, there is the 1NR-VE, 1NR-FBE, and so on, 2NR, 3NR, 4NR, all the way to 8NR. Pretty much big family. Alright, so let's start with the specs for this engine. Let's see what we have here. We have as you can see, we have an inline 4 engine, aluminium block. As you can see, 72.5mm on the bore and 80.5mm on the stroke, which equals 1329 cc engine. The engine uses a dual overhead camshaft system, as you can see. Let me show you. Which means that the engine has 2 camshafts on the top, as you can see, 4 valves per cylinder. That means each cylinder has 4 valves, 2 for the intake and 2 for the exhaust. Aluminium cylinder head material, as you can see, without VVL technology. This engine uses only VVT-i dual technology. Let's see, we have cast iron crankshaft, cast connecting rods, and low friction cast pistons. And this is actually correct. Toyota use these kind of low friction cast pistons to save fuel, because low friction means, it's very obvious, the pistons, when any piston, cast, forge, whatever, when it moves up and down, it creates friction on the rings and on the cylinder bore, and from the inside, we call the combustion chamber inside. It creates a friction, and this friction results in like an opposite power to the engine power, and that requires more power and more energy to go over this friction. And using this low friction cast pistons, it will eliminate this problem, and it will save fuel, and it will make the engine more economical and more efficient, but with a little bit disadvantage of that these pistons, these low friction cast pistons, are not really strong. I mean, they will survive in this tiny engine with tiny amount of power over it, but if you are turbocharging, or if you are pushing this engine to its limit, no, they will not survive. You need to upgrade them to a regular cast if you want to go cheap, or if you want to go sporty with forged pistons. So that's that. We have zero quality on the internals. 11.5:1. This is the European version, because, as I said, there was a Malaysian version with 10.5:1 instead of 11.5:1, but here I am making the European version. Let's see, we have 58 on the cam profile, the variable valve timing on all cams, which means, if you want to translate it into Toyota language, it's called the Dual VVT-i. That's Toyota technology, or as it says here, variable valve timing on all cams, on the intake cam and the exhaust cam as well. Plus 4 quality here. We have naturally aspirated engine with multi-point fuel injection. Actually, when I started to read the article on Wikipedia about this engine, I thought with all of this fuel saving technology that Toyota used direct fuel injection. But turned out, no, they used EFI, not DFI. So I had to use the EFI with single throttle body and standard intake manifold. I had to use premium 95 octane fuel, because on 91 with that high compression ratio, I could not achieve the correct horsepower and torque without making the engine to knock and explode, so I had to use 95 octane. The air-fuel ratio or the fuel mixture is 13.9. Some of you will say that this is a little bit high, it should be in the 14s or even lean than 14, but also I will remain in the same point, which is I couldn't achieve this correct power and torque figures without pushing a little bit of fuel in, so you have to forgive me for this. Ignition timing is 54, which is good, nearly in the advanced side, and of course the official RPM limit is 6,000 RPM with +4 quality on the fuel system. We have a short cast header, not cast log. No, if you look at the pictures, you will see the engine used a short cast header with a 1.5 inch exhaust diameter and a high flow 3-way Carrera converter. I'm not really sure about the real engine, if Toyota put a high flow Carrera converter or a regular 3-way. I'm not really sure about this. If you know the correct answer or the correct Carrera converter setup on the real engine, tell me in the comment section below, please. I didn't put any first muffler. I put only a regular quiet reverse flow muffler on the second muffler setup here, so I can make the engine quieter and to make it light as possible. +6 quality on the exhaust. I needed to push the quality a little bit so I can make the engine more quiet and more powerful and torque, so I can achieve the correct numbers. So this is the final result: 99.4 horsepower at 6,000 RPM like the real engine, and 97.2 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM. And actually I'm a little bit surprised because it's correct actually, because let's see the pound-feet, right, so it made 97. Alright, so it's actually nearly correct, because the real engine made 97.2 pound-feet of torque at 3,800. This one is a little bit more, 4,000. I mean, you have to forgive me for this because it's really difficult to achieve these numbers. Because some of you would say, oh, this is a sleepy, regular, economical engine, you can achieve the numbers very quickly. But no, that's not correct, because as I showed you before, the compression ratio is very high. Actually, it's 11.5 to 1, and I'm not using DFI, I'm using EFI. And EFI with high compression ratio, it's not really a good combination, and it will require a lot of engineering to make a good amount of power and torque and to save fuel as well. But in DFI or direct fuel injection, you can save a lot of fuel and put a high compression ratio internals, and the engine will survive and it will run perfectly. But in EFI it's a different story. Right, so let's fire up this beast and let me show you how it looks from the inside. So these are the low friction cast pistons. If you want to read more about them, you can, if you have the game, you can choose the pistons that you want to read about, or basically any part you want to read about, and press here. And yes, these are low friction cast pistons. Low friction cast pistons are manufactured in the same way as normal cast pistons. They are optimized for minimum friction rather than high strength, and this is my point. They are not really strong. This is done in a way including reducing the size of the piston skirts and using a low friction surface coating. These pistons will improve fuel economy, but they are not very strong, such as are a bad choice for performance application. As I said, if you are pushing this engine to its limit, no, these pistons will not survive. But the crankshaft and the connecting rods, these are pretty much normal, and they can survive if you want to turbocharge this engine. So let's fire it up. As you can hear, the engine sounds weird actually, and that because of the cam profile 58. When you put it on 55, like to 58, 59, the engine will sound like this. Inline 4 engines will sound like this. And I promise you, if you use a performance exhaust system or high performance or racing intake manifold, the engine will sound really weird. So as you can see, there is nothing special here. It's a very boring engine actually, because this engine was designed to do economical runs, to serve people, and to be as reliable as well as ever, and of course to burn as so much little fuel as possible, and as I said, to be reliable as ever. And this is what the engine was designed for. But as a car enthusiast, I would never buy this engine or the cars that actually came with this engine. I mean, Toyota Yaris, come on, or the what other car? What do they call them? That these Toyota, the Vios, or the urban cruiser, the Passo, especially the Toyota IQ. I mean, come on. Can you find a car enthusiast with a Toyota IQ? I mean, the Corolla, yes, the classic Corolla, yes, that's an amazing car, but the new Corolla, well, it's boring. It's boring as ever. Alright, so as a car enthusiast and an engine lover, and of course as a mechanical lover for these inline 4 engines and these compact ones, I will do this engine a favor and modify it. Let's push the engine to its limits by saving this replica. I'm gonna call it stock so I don't mix everything up. Replica stock, go out. So we have 99 horsepower, should be easy to find. Here we go. Replica stock, we need to make a cologne. There we go, cologne, revise. Basically a cologne is everything, the engine is still basically the same thing, but now we can modify it. And as always, I want to start by modifying the exhaust system, because it's very restricted and it's very quiet, and the headers are restricted. So basically putting on higher flow, better engineered headers, it will make a great difference. So let's start with tubular. Check out the difference from 99 horsepower to 103, and from 97 pound-feet of torque to 99. That's a great improvement. Going to long tubular, actually, it will result in more power, the same torque, but the torque will actually continue longer, which is good. The torque will peak much later, which is great. Let's see, putting a straight through muffler here with bypass valves, that should keep the exhaust pipe small. I don't want to go any bigger. And alright, so let's hear the new exhaust. This is how it looks. Long tubular headers with the same exhaust pipe and we've changed the muffler from a reverse flow muffler into a straight through muffler with a bypass valves. That's awesome. The engine sounds much louder, and of course with the extra horsepower and the torque, that will be amazing. From 99 horsepower to 110 horsepower, like an extra 11 horsepower just by replacing the header, and of course changing the muffler from a regular cheap reverse flow into a more expensive straight through muffler with a bypass valves, which should make the engine much more powerful. Alright, so let's see. Now the connecting rods and the pistons and the crankshaft can go, actually, like as you can see, the pistons, because these are the weakest of all, they can go to 7,200 RPM. So I can actually go to a dyno and raise the RPM limit. 7,200. Wow, check it out. By raising the RPM limit, we have 118 horsepower, but you need to be careful when you are raising the RPM limit, that you need to make sure that the engine is clean. You have no knocking noises, or maybe the engine, you have to have like a low mileage engine. High mileage engine, even if the internals can take more RPM, but usually the rings and the rings and the cylinder chamber, all of these will be like worn out, and you will be actually destroying the engine. So you need to make sure that your engine is healthy before raising the RPM limit, and also you need to make sure that the internals can take this amount of RPM. Let's see. So what we did is we changed the exhaust system and we raised the RPM limit. That resulted in everything good so far. Alright, no need to do anything because we have the octane value. We are at the top of it, so we cannot add more ignition timing. So let's fire this engine and hear the new RPM. the next step is of course to change the intake system. I mean, these economical engines, I don't think that maybe there is an aftermarket kit for like a, let's say an aftermarket cold air intake or something. I don't think so. Maybe there is. Maybe there is, like for the Corolla maybe, or the Yaris. I think there is, or maybe for the urban cruiser. Maybe you can find some cold air intakes kits for the engine. But unfortunately, as you can see, let me show you something. Here we go. The intake is actually the throttle body, and the intake manifold is actually restricting air. So actually there is no point of upgrading it to a performance, because it will still be restrictive. Look, yeah, as you can see, standard, performance, race. Yes, you will gain more power, of course, because you are removing the air restrictions from the air filter and from the basically from these piping here. And when you choose a performance intake manifold, you will put a bigger throttle body, and as you can see, longer runners and big intake manifold, but still restrictive. The pistons are not receiving their maximum amount of air, even when you put a racing intake manifold. Actually, this should be in carbon fiber, but there is like an error in the game. Alright, so as you can see, it's still restrictive. So the healthiest way to go, and actually you will not gain that extra horsepower. I mean, from standard to race, you will gain extra 2 horsepower, and you will gain like extra 5 pound-feet of torque. And you will be paying a lot of money for it, to change the intake manifold to a carbon fiber racing intake manifold for extra 2 horsepower. But the healthiest way to go is to go online and purchase custom-made individual throttle body kits like this. That means each cylinder will have its own individual throttle body, which will make on standard. Remember, this is standard. I'm not using racing or performance. This is single standard. This is individual throttle body standard. Check it out, extra 4 horsepower, and yes, you will lose a little bit of torque, like extra 1 pound-feet of torque. I know that, but look at the power, and the engine will flow much higher. And check out the throttle response from 53.8 to 63.2. It will be much lighter, more high performance, better in every way. And I know these are not cheap, I know, but they will result in a beautiful performance engine. And they will keep the engine, actually they will keep the same fuel efficiency. I mean, it says here that it lost a little bit of fuel efficiency, but still 23.9. But if you want to go with individual throttle bodies, go with performance individual throttle body. I mean, since you paid the money, go with the performance package, not the standard package, because the performance package will flow much more air in, and that will result in better fuel efficiency and of course more horsepower and more torque. Alright, so let's fire this beast up with the new intake system and hear it. Alright, so the engine is working absolutely perfect. More power, more torque, more fuel efficiency. It's the dream. It's the dream, right? Remember, we started at 99 horsepower and now we have 123.6 horsepower. We gained extra 24 horsepower, and we gained extra 2 pound-feet of torque, which is really good. It's not bad at all. And of course, the more RPM, 7,200 instead of 6,000, and that is better in every way. Right, now the next step is, of course, to change the camshafts. I don't know that if you can find a kit, or maybe if there is a company that is designing like better camshaft for this engine, but I'm sure if you put more aggressive, more hot camshafts in this engine, you will start to lose fuel efficiency, as you can see right now. I mean, of course, I can go higher, I can make more power, more torque, but check out the fuel efficiency. Yes, we are losing fuel efficiency, like all the way to 87. This way will give us 136 horsepower and 103 pound-feet of torque. And yes, check out the fuel efficiency. We used to be in the 24 section, 24%, and now we are in the 22.5 section, which is a little bit, which is a little bit lower. But check out the power, 136 horsepower. And we need to change the exhaust system, go with a bigger diameter because this one is restrictive. So going with 1.8-inch exhaust diameter will give us 142 horsepower naturally aspirated. And yes, we have lost a little bit of fuel efficiency, but now the engine should sound amazing. Now that is very good. Of course, you know what's the next step is. The next step is to go with turbocharging, but we have a little problem, which is the pistons. I mean, look at the pistons. The pistons can take only 170 pound-feet of torque. I mean, the connecting rods can take 207. The crankshaft can take 236. But 170, this is very achievable, easily achievable, because currently naturally aspirated we have achieved 105 pound-feet of torque. Can you imagine with turbocharging? And also we have another problem if you want to go turbocharging, which is compression ratio. The engine uses 11.5 to 1, which is extremely high, but 11.5 to 1, which results with using EFI, which result in the engine needs a lot of octane to run, like 93 right now without turbocharging. So what do you expect when you put a turbocharger on? You need to use 98 or even 100 octane. But no, I'm not gonna go with that. So if I want to turbocharge this engine, let's drop the ignition to the ground, 0. Yes, to the 0, to the ground, and let's add a little bit of fuel in. Yeah, I know fuel efficiency is rubbish right now, but let's check this one out. Ball bearing, let's see, 10 psi of boost, no less, 8 psi of boost. Let's see, let's go with small turbine, small compressor, maximum air ratio. Alright, so far so good. Alright, like this. Now we need to put a bigger turbine. Because this engine is actually tiny, there is no point of pushing this engine to its limits. And actually we can survive on turbo. That's good, like +5 quality turbo. But unfortunately, remember the ignition timing is at 0. So let's push the fuel to 13.0 and starting to add ignition in. It's impossible, you need to use 98 because right now we are maxed out. So with 98 you can, not by much actually, 175 horsepower and 134 pound-feet of torque. So you can actually survive on the cheap pistons, not cheap pistons, on these weak low friction pistons. If you are using a low boost turbo like 7.95, this is not a high boosted engine, but still a boosted engine. Let's see by how much we can push this little beast here. I want to push more fuel in, like 12.5. Put more ignition in, not by much, and then tweak the turbo. I want to tweak it efficiently, more efficient. Also, I want the engine to be efficient as well, and that means that turbo should kick in early. Like, I mean, right now it's 2,800 RPM. The turbo will kick in, but I want less. Like now 2,700. Okay, now that's good, but we lost a little bit of power. So what should we do here? Alright, smaller intercooler a little bit, 8 psi of boost, and push ignition in. No, So bigger turbine will result, not turbine, bigger compressor will result in more power without using so much octane. Alright, but the engine or the turbo will kick in late, so I'm gonna keep it at 2800, alright, 2800 RPM. That will be more efficient, because remember we are searching for efficiency as well. Wow, the engine is not really that much efficient. So let's drop the ignition and put 2-inch exhaust diameter in. That should result in better performance. Now we can push the ignition in. I mean, I want 200 horsepower. I really want 200 horsepower. I mean, right now I'm using what, 98 octane fuel, which is really high. So let's change the injectors to high quality ones, like +6 quality. The exhaust is good, the turbo +6 quality, and the camshaft should be in the +6 quality region as well. I'm not gonna touch the bottom end because it should remain stock. And I'm really surprised that we are not making that much of a torque. I'm really genuinely surprised. I thought that 170 pound-feet of torque is very achievable, and that because we are not pushing a lot of boost in, only 8 psi. I mean, like if this engine was like 10-11 psi of boost, yes, we will be reaching the 170 point. 191 horsepower, come on. 2.2 inch exhaust diameter. Now that's massive for this engine. So this is how it looks. Individual throttle bodies, high performance exhaust system, turbocharger, intercooler, and power. What a lovely tiny engine, 1.3 liter engine, and it's making 192 horsepower. Now that's very good. Can you imagine a Toyota Yaris with this amount of power, 200 horsepower or 190 horsepower? It will be a rocket ship. So let's tweak. I want to tweak the camshafts. Let's see if I want like extremely aggressive, like so, 95 on the cam profile. Alright. It's not really efficient. I mean, we have extra. We need extra 4 horsepower. How can I achieve extra 4 horsepower without blowing up this engine? I want 200 horsepower. I don't care how. So I'm gonna add a little bit of fuel in. Alright. So we have 200 horsepower right now, or 201. Much better. Where is it? Here we go. It's a perfect engine. Yes, it's not as fuel efficient as before. It used to be 24%, now it's 18.9%. but we started with 99 horsepower and now we have 200 horsepower. We started with 97 pound-feet of torque and now we have 146.9 pound-feet of torque. Now this is an amazing gain, and the engine only weighs like 95 kilograms with the turbos and everything else. And the engine right now is using 98 octane fuel, which is available in Europe, I think. So if you have this Yaris, or if you have this urban cruiser with this engine, or if you have this Corolla with this engine, don't worry, 200 horsepower is very achievable. Boost this engine, individual throttle bodies, different high performance exhaust system, custom piping, custom ECU tune, and of course high performance injectors, 98 octane fuel, and job done. Job done indeed. 200 horsepower, easy peasy. Alright, so thank you so much guys for watching, and let's see, thank you so much Mr. Kevin Samosat for your amazing request. And please, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, get subscribed if you are new to the channel, watch all my previous videos, and share the video if you want to share it. And I hope to see you soon with more amazing requests like this one and even more. So thank you so much for watching, and goodbye for now, my friends.